It's June 13th, 2022. This is Rook. Hi there, welcome to episode 185 of Rook. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hope you're keeping well wherever you're tuning in from around the world. Hello to you from Toronto, from Canada. Salam Dustan Aziz, Durud Bash Shama. Hi, Groovy Shaya.
Hi, Aziz.
Hi, Captain Reza in the studio.
Sir.
Hello, the fabulous Keon.
Hi, Jian.
So let me set up our guest coming up in a little bit, joining me from Norway.
Wow.
Where he has gotten asylum and safety. This is an award-winning Iranian cartoonist who used his art as a lifeline to stay alive when he was placed in an immigration camp, which was more like a prison camp, for years upon trying to seek asylum in Australia.
Oh, yeah.
Ali Dorani is his name. Eaten Fish is his pen name. I know you guys have seen his cartoons, and you really, folks out there have to hear this story. Next Monday is designated as World Refugee Day, and World Refugee Day is an international day designated by the UN to honor refugees around the globe. So it falls on June 20th each year and celebrates the strength and courage of people who've been forced to flee their home country to escape conflict or persecution. And so this World Refugee Day, I guess, is an occasion to build empathy and understanding for the plight of refugees and to recognize their resilience in rebuilding their lives. And this applies close to home for us because some of the members of the Rook team and certainly our outer circle were asylum seekers when they came west. And so the UN mission for refugees is the following. Every person on this planet has a right to seek safety, whoever they are, wherever they come from, and whenever they are forced to flee. That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
And that's all very nice. And I feel like...
in theory.
I feel like all of this can get pretty sanitized after a while. Like we tend to get to know people who are doing impressive things who came west as refugees. I'm thinking of like Ali Parsa, who is now this impressive CEO in London and landed in the UK as a teenage refugee. And in those stories, we lose sight of the trauma and sometimes terrifying. That's right, the ordeals that people go through to get away from, in the case of this show, get away from Iran, right? And so we're going to have Ali Dorani come on, and I really want people to hear this story because this is a guy, I know we were just talking about it before we came on air, you guys know a little bit about a guy that escapes Iran as a young man with the promise of Australian asylum, wants to get asylum in Australia, only to be put on a boat that, like when you hear the story, Reza, I know you know a little bit about it already, but I'm thinking you are going to, so much of this is going to actually...
hits close
Yeah, he gets on a boat that actually sinks, and he thinks he's going to die. He gets picked up by Australian authorities with a bunch of other asylum seekers and put in an immigration camp, quote unquote, on an island that's really more of a prison, like a barbaric prison. Remember that mission, the UN mission for refugees, and how the disconnect of what really happens, where he spends years in this prison or this immigration camp, almost dies, goes on a hunger strike. Finally, he starts creating some cartoons. He's a very talented cartoonist. And these cartoons get out to the world, make his story an international cause that leads him to finally getting accepted in Norway as an international refugee. Wow. And now he's a political cartoonist known around the world because he was drawing cartoons of his plight. So quite a story. I mean, I'm grateful that he's coming on the show in the shadow of with World Refugee Day coming up to share this story.
But when you say Australia, because I'm pretty I like to follow up on the immigration status of different Western countries because I did a bunch of documentaries on it, and I like to keep updated. And Canada is just a very welcoming immigrant country, so more.
So is Australia, ostensibly. That's the whole thing.
And
they say welcome refugees, but that's not exactly what happens.
In Canada we don't have closed camps. In Australia, so what you're saying, it sounds like something that I heard before.
They put them on an island.
Yeah,
so
it's not part of the Australian soil, essentially.
Correct.
Yeah,
or it's not. Yeah,
but that's particularly Australia, which is insane. But
all right,
I can't wait to hear her story.
Ali Dorani joining us from Norway in just a little bit. We're coming to you on rookmedia.com. It's there that you can link to all of our platforms. We're on this ongoing mission to build a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. We're coming to you on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, and CastBox. If you like to see some visuals with Rook, switch over to YouTube right now. And if you like your Rook descriptions and bulletins in both English and in Persian, check us out on Telegram. And you can become a patron of our show. Support us by pressing the Support Us button at rookmedia.com. If you haven't checked out the website, all the previous episodes, guests, different programs we have, all at rookmedia.com. Shout out to my late dad.
Yeah.
See the tattoo on my arm?
That's right.
Farhang. It's Farhang's Tavallud. It's Farhang's my late father's birthday was June 13th.
Wow.
Yeah.
He's celebrating up there.
Wait a minute. So you were
June
born
9th.
June 9th.
That's
yeah.
so cute.
Speaking of which,
yes.
happy birthday.
Thank you.
Happy belated.
Again.
Thank you.
Jian.
Nice to see you at the weekend.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
We had a there was a party.
There sure was. It was. What an eclectic, interesting group. It was a massive
I
party.
feel like anybody who was anybody in Toronto was there.
Who's Persian.
It was Persian.
That's right. There was a lot of Persians. My dear friend who's not Persian was the DJ and very confused. Very confused about
he was
what
getting requests for Persian songs. I remember at one point he was like, I don't understand what fatane is. I was like, oh, somebody asked for fatane.
We gave him a few Persian songs, but, once again, I was like, wow, listen to this remix, this Prince remix he's playing. No one dancing, Then he plays the fatane.
It was great, man.
But it was really nice to see you all there.
It was
awesome.
That was the best birthday. I think my mom was the star.
She really was, man. Yeah, she stole the show. That's for sure. There were some nice performances too.
There were some nice performances. It was. I was touched that there were performances.
Are we being secretive about the performance?
I don't know. Maybe they don't want to be revealed. The performers'
but
identity.
It was an incredible performance. Let me just say.
Let's throw people
All right,
off.
we'll leave it there.
Who knew that Cirque du Soleil could fit inside the home? Yes. Okay, let's get to our feature guest. Thank you guys, Captain Reza, the fabulous Keon, Groovy Shaya. I'll catch you on the other side. My feature guest today has a fraught but ultimately inspiring story of perseverance and determination. Ali Dorani, better known perhaps by his pen name Eaten Fish, is an Iranian cartoonist and activist who gained recognition for drawings about his everyday life while being detained in a notorious Australian refugee camp on Manus Island, Papua New Guinea, for almost 4 years. Ali received the Cartoonists' Rights Network International Award for Courage in Editorial Cartooning in 2016. His cartoons documented horrendous abuses and excesses at this camp. Ali was finally granted refugee status in Stavanger, Norway, with the help of the International Cities of Refugees Network and the Artists at Risk Connection program. And he's now has been living in Norway since 2017, continuing his work as a well-regarded cartoonist and advocate for refugees. But he also still experiences PTSD and severe OCD and panic attacks as a product of his harrowing experience. And right now, Ali Dorani, Eaten Fish, joins me from Stavanger, Norway today. Hello, sir.
Hi.
Very nice to have you on the program. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to the program.
First of all, Ali, having seen your great cartoon works and having learned about your story, it's inspiring. It's great to know you're okay and that you're currently safe and working in Norway. How are you doing these days in general?
Yeah, I'm actually working as a freelance artist. Almost, I'm like a full-time artist, and I do lots of cartoons, and I work with lots of different projects connected to human rights. And I usually run a lots of seminars and storytelling sessions with the students. And I was very lucky to have this large audience, over 20,000 of students here in Norway. So yeah.
You've said in the past, art saved my life. Art gave me freedom. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I still follow that, but it's a little different because it depends where you're living. Yeah, I lived in prison, and actually it was art that introduced me to the world. It introduced me to the people in Australia, and then the international communities got to know me through art. So I usually say, in the situation where I lived, art actually saved my life.
Let me get into the story for people who don't know it. I mean, I don't even know if telling this story is, I don't want to re-traumatize you or something, but I know that you tell this story intentionally because you want people to know what folks go through in these kind of refugee camps, right?
You know, when you go to the therapist, they usually do these talk therapies,
Mm-hmm.
and I learned that by talking about this story, I'm also doing a process of healing for myself. And I learned that through all the therapy sessions that I have had in the past. And also, I believe that without talking about the situation I had in the past and the current situations for other refugees and asylum seekers in Australia, talking about it is the only chance that we can share the stories and we can be the voice for all the voiceless children in the detention centers in Australia.
It's a great change. So let's get into the story. I mean, you first adopted the name Eaten Fish after your boat sank in the Indian Ocean when you were attempting to seek asylum in Australia. Take me 2 steps back from that. When and why? I mean, you're a kid from Iran. When and why did you decide to leave Iran?
It was in 2013, early 2013, that I ended up in some circumstances that I had to leave the country. And I usually don't talk about the reasons I left Iran because I cannot put my family's life in danger. Most of the stories that I tell are usually after I left Iran.
Were you in Tehran?
Yeah, I lived in Tehran. Yeah.
Okay, so you make the decision, I'm guessing with your family's blessing, to try and get out of Iran, and you go to Indonesia first, right?
Yeah. So the thing is, lots of people ask me, why didn't you go to Europe from the start? And the thing was, if I wanted to go to Europe, somewhere in Europe, anywhere, I had to pass countries. I had to pass too many countries, to get to a safe destination. And Australia was kind of easiest way for me to get to safety because it was so far from Iran. And I could take a direct flight from Tehran to south of Indonesia. And so that was my chance to get away as far as possible.
Okay, so you managed to leave Iran, and by the way, I don't even know what the technicalities at that point in 2013. Would nobody ask you in Iran why you're leaving to Indonesia? You would. I mean, how did you actually get out of the country?
The thing is, I got in touch with I'm not sure if I should say these things, but I got in touch with a person who was doing human trafficking. And it was someone I found on the internet. So I just searched on the internet and I ended up to this telephone, and then I called it, and then the person told me that I can pay him and he helps me to get out. And so I only met this person once, and I gave him money, and then he left, and then I was middle of the street, and I was like, okay, I just gave all my money to this person, and then he's leaving.
Was that person promising to get you to Australia or just to Indonesia?
No, he was promising me to get me to Australia.
Right.
He actually booked the tickets for me, and he told me when and where I should leave and at what time I should leave. So in terms of trust, I didn't have any trust to these people.
Right.
The only thing I did that I had to trust someone. I had to trust the smuggler. I didn't have any other options.
But by the way, I mean, you look very young. I mean, you have a beautiful young look, but I don't actually know your age. Are you in your would you have been in your teens when you left?
No, I was 20 years old when I left Iran.
Okay.
And now it's like 10 years, 9 years after.
Right,
So
I could do the math now. Yeah. So, but had you been anywhere in the world before? I mean, this is a pretty daring thing for a 20-year-old to do, but I guess the circumstances in Iran were enough that you wanted to get out.
Yeah, exactly. So before traveling to Indonesia, I've never been out of Iran, and I never had plans to get out of Iran. And I never thought about leaving Iran until 6 months before I left. And so yeah, suddenly my future changed, and I had to choose. I had to make decisions that would put my life in risk. And but since I didn't have a proper option to choose,
right,
and I chose to leave. And also my family's safety was very important for me, and by me leaving the country, I actually made my family be safer, actually.
Can I just ask you, without this affecting what you don't want to talk about, but you've become known as an activist in terms of your political cartooning and your human rights activism stuff. Were you an activist in Iran at that time, or no?
No, I wasn't then.
So this wasn't related to any activism. This was just
nothing. No. So the thing is, the situation about Iran is obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like kind of cliche. I usually been asked these questions: why did you leave Iran? And it's kind of a cliche, because if you want to know like why I left Iran, the situation is so obvious, and we usually read a lot about Iran on the news. So
yeah. Most of the people many of the people we have on this show who are in the diaspora have not left Iran wittingly. They've left because they had to leave. So we get it. So you're in Indonesia. You've given your money over to. There's this moment where you're led to a boat that is going to take you to Australia, ostensibly, and you've talked about the fact that you already could tell this smuggler's boat from Indonesia that was supposed to go to Australia was going to be a dangerous ordeal. Can you describe it?
Yeah, it was a very complicated situation, because I was being taken to a beach somewhere in South Indonesia, and I didn't really know where I was. I didn't have phone, I didn't have passport, and I didn't have access to internet to find out GPS and find out where I was. So also the situation was very critical, because I was like in middle of jungle, and I could not go back the way I started, and the only thing I could do was going forward. And when I was close to the beach and I saw the boat, I was actually telling myself that I'm just walking to my death, and I can't swim.
Wow, right.
So I don't do swimming, and I've never learned it before, and I still don't know how to swim. And the timing that I got to these small boats, there were like these carriers taking people to these bigger boats, and the carriers, they were like, it was broken boats, and there was water inside, and I was so scared that I'm going to sink in there. So, and
just out of curiosity, how do you even communicate with people? Are you speaking sort of English with people? I mean, when smugglers in Indonesia, how do you communicate with them?
I didn't know how to speak English at that time.
Wow. Okay.
And it was very funny, because when I was in Iran, I started learning English, and I realized how difficult it is. And I searched on the internet, and I ended up to these files that they teach you English in sleep. And I tried to learn English in sleep, and it didn't work. And when I was in Indonesia, I realized I never learned anything in English, and I couldn't respond to anything. I couldn't answer any questions. And with these, the people, the carriers to the boats, the only thing I could tell was like money. I have money, and they had the boat, so I knew what boat is in English. And I told them that take me to the boat, like by just saying like money and boat. And that was it. And it looked like that the local people in the area, they knew and their business was smuggling people.
Right.
They were making money, because when we arrived at this beach, there were hundreds of local people outside, and they came all around me, and they wanted to take my clothes off. They wanted to take my backpack with them, and they were just there to, like, how do you say, to loot, from the asylum seekers. And it was very scary. It was the middle of jungle, and not knowing the language, not knowing where you are, not having a passport to, like, escape from there, and not having communication devices. It was very scary.
So you see this boat, you can't swim, you're terrified that this boat is going to sink. It does. So how do you even survive the boat sinking?
Before I got to the boat, it was around, like, maybe 2 minutes, standing in the beach and looking at the boat and looking at all the people getting on these boats and going to the bigger boat. And it's like I was feeling that I'm walking to my death, and I suddenly remembered all my memories from childhood, all my plans for my life, and everything came in front of my eyes. And after 2 minutes, I just took this step. I went to the smaller boats, and then I took my clothes off. So I only had, like, a short and a singlet, because I was thinking, if I have too much clothes on me and if I sink, if I don't have clothes, it's gonna help me to sink lesser.
Right.
And then when we got to the big boat,
how many people were on these boats?
There were around 139 people, I think, if I'm correct.
And were they from all around the world, or were they Iranians? Who were they?
Yeah, more than half of the boat was from Myanmar. And there were some Iranians and some people from Arab countries, I think.
Okay.
And yeah.
So what happens to the boat?
The thing is, I think I was very unlucky, because as soon as I arrived at the boat, there was storm happening.
Oh boy.
It was very funny, because before we got to the beach, there was no storm, there was no rain. And as soon as we got to the boat, the storm started, and big waves. And the boat looked big, but it was not a proper like touristic boat that you say you are sitting on it and it's going to take you to destination with full of safety. It was like a fishing boat. It was kind of like lench. I'm not sure what it is in English. Like lenches in Iran, we call them lench. These wooden boats.
Okay.
So the boat had the capacity of having all of us on board, but it was packed. So when all of us got on board, the boat was packed, and there were a couple of Indonesian people who were controlling the boat, and they started moving towards the ocean. And around 52 hours after, we got to Australia's shore, and that was when Australian Navy found us. And but the storm was so bad that the Navy told us that they cannot. We knew we had someone translating there. Yeah, there was someone who knew how to speak English very well, and the Navy told us that because of storm they cannot take us to the Navy boat. So they told us to go forward, and they supported us from behind by showing us the light and showing us the direction, you know. And at the same time, the boat was sinking. The pump engine didn't stop working suddenly.
Oh,
yeah, and then the boat started being filled with water, and there were some people trying to throw the water out. And you know, it was very kind of scary because I was like looking at all these children. We had 2 babies on board, and it was very like scary for children, actually.
Did you did you think you were going to die?
Well, I hoped I won't die, but there was no guarantee. Especially I saw the boat is filling with water, and then I was like, okay, then this is the end probably. But luckily, we got to the shore very fast, and then the Australian Navy came and took us out of the boat. And
so you get to Australia. I mean, this is something that I think, and I'm glad you are one of the people speaking out about this. Oftentimes, we think countries like Australia or like Canada, where we're located here, are very open in terms of asylum for refugees, clear refugees who need to who need asylum. But it didn't quite work out that way, did it? In Australia, you end up being sent to a detention center, and you end up after a few months in this Manus Island. Why do you end up there?
Yeah, the thing is, when the fishing boat started moving from the ocean, it was, I think it was 20th of July 2013, and before that, the smugglers came to us, and then they took all our communication devices away. They took all our passports away, all our documents away, and if I knew that Australian government has made a law to stop the refugees and asylum seekers entering Australia, I for sure would not go to Australia. But the thing was, I didn't have communication devices. We didn't have TV. And the timing that I was on the boat, unfortunately, Australian government created the law while we were on the way to Australia. And when we arrived, they took us out of the fishing boat, and they took us to the beach, and then they gave us numbers, and they told us that we are under Australia's protection now, and they told us that we are going to be sent to immigration camps, and then from there the process of immigration starts. At first, they didn't tell us that they're going to send us to another country, and then they're going to put us in jail for a very long time.
Yeah, how exactly does that work? I mean, how do they justify sending you? Because Manus Island Detention Center is actually part of Papua New Guinea, right? It's not actually it's not in Australia. So how do they legitimize that?
This is part of a bigger political game, actually, if you want to go through it. But the thing was that Australian government rents islands in other countries, like poorer countries, that they're willing to rent their islands out, And what they do is that they rent these islands, and then they build accommodation in there, not because they want to send refugees there, but because they are planning to have army bases there. Like where I lived, it was supposed to be an army base. But they turned it to detention center for refugees, And it was very interesting, because what Australian government did was they built all these accommodations in Manus Island, and then when the international communities and human rights organizations started complaining to Australia about why do you imprison innocent people, Australia would go on TV and say, we are not imprisoning them. It's Papua New Guinea's responsibility. So they used to refer us to each other, Australia says Papua New Guinea, and Papua New Guinea says it's Australia's responsibility. And Australian government, again, would not call the detention centers prison or detention center. They used to call it immigration center. Right. So what we know about immigration centers is that people go there to go through immigration process, and then after that they're free.
Right.
But they would never say, how long are you going to stay in this immigration center? And why was I locked in this immigration center?
Right, the immigration center. I mean, having learned some of the details now of your harrowing stay there, the immigration center is a bit more is more of a prison, really, and a prison camp, and not one that. I mean, this Manus Island Detention Center turns out is notorious for rampant human rights violations. It's been condemned by the United Nations and human rights organizations. Give us a sense of just. I mean, I know you could spend days talking about this, but just how horrific are the conditions there? Were the conditions for you there?
Yeah, Manus Island is on equator, so it's very, very hot and humid every day, and it's very nice for people to go to equator and live there for 1 or 2 weeks, and have a holiday there. But when you are being forced to live in a place where you're not supposed to be there. By the international laws, you were supposed to be protected, not being sent to jail. And then this jail is not being called jail, it's called immigration center, but it's totally locked. And what they did was they put us there without giving us access to basic human rights, like having access to telephone, internet, having access to lawyer, visitors. No journalists were allowed to come to the island to visit us. Nobody was allowed to take any news out. Even workers, they were told that if they take any news out, they might get between 1 to 2 years sentence in prison. So it was a very, very restricted area just to keep asylum seekers.
The reason I know some of the story, of how difficult it is through your work, through your cartoons, and some of them are so powerful and so poignant. You have one cartoon about Manus Island that is that on the face of it, it's sunny. It looks like a sort of resort island that is kind of an oasis, and just below the surface is a big skeletal head, which is essentially what you've just described, and you do this with images so powerfully. What's interesting to me about how you've become this internationally recognized cartoonist is it wasn't something that you necessarily had intended to be doing, if I understand correctly, when you got to Australia. You enjoyed drawing when you were a kid, but it wasn't the first thing that came to mind as part of your asylum. When did you make the decision to start drawing cartoons? I mean, this would be a fateful decision because it would affect how you would finally get out of this situation. But when was that decision made?
Yeah. I was moved to the detention centers, and it was 2 months after, where, I had OCD since when I was in Iran. I got OCD. We had a car accident with all my family, and then after the car accident, I got OCD. And it was kind of because of PTSD as well, because of the accident. And but my OCD was very mild when I was in Iran. I did not suffer because of it. But when I was moved to this detention center, and then my life was out of control, my OCD got out of control. And at some point, it was just 2 months that I arrived in Australia, I started washing books and dictionaries and then papers because I was thinking they're dirty. And when this happened, I decided to see a doctor, to see a medical nurse. And they told me that I have to take medication. It's really bad. The OCD is really bad. And they thought that I have to take medication. But I didn't really want to take medication because I was afraid of medication. I was thinking that with medication, I'm going to go crazy.
Right.
And what happened was I came back to my room, and then I suddenly remembered I used to draw when I was a child. I used to draw cartoons. And what happened was I decided to use cartoons as a coping mechanism. Cartooning as a coping mechanism. And I didn't have papers. At first, I started drawing on the walls in my room. And then I got access to papers. And yeah. And then, the first drawing I did was because we had lots of people in one small area. And standing in a line to get food was it could turn to a very, very dramatic situation. People end up fighting with each other. So what I did was, the first cartoon I did was drawing a food line and asking people to stand in the line one by one to get their food. And suddenly this drawing got so much attention from the workers in the camp. So what they did was they copied my drawing, and then they sent it to the other areas and put it on the wall. So if people want to go get food, they used to see this cartoon, stand in the line one by one, get your food. And then when I saw this reaction from the workers, from the authorities, I got interested to do more. And the second drawing I did was I drew Australia's map on my T-shirt, and I wrote down that I am only a refugee.
Yes, it's become kind of an iconic image, that drawing that you did. But 2 steps back, I mean, it seems phenomenally brave to start doing these drawings. I mean, when I hear about your experience there, that you're starving at some points, you're assaulted, the conditions are horrendous. Everything that anyone can imagine about some kind of horrible detention is basically what you suffer there. The decision to start drawing cartoons that would depict the conditions at Manus Island seems like a very courageous thing to do. Were you not scared that you're going to somehow be punished or dealt with for doing this?
At first I was in an Australian detention center inside Australia. So when I drew the drawing with this map on it, the immigration authorities saw it, and then I saw this reaction from them. They wanted me to stop drawing. They wanted me to stop sharing this horrific story about Australia. And when I saw that reaction, I suddenly got even more brave to do it. And I've never been looked at as a political cartoonist before. And then now, like, I'm doing this, and then I see this reaction, and I looked at it as a very powerful tool for myself to protest,
Yes.
to show my disagreements with the government.
Yes.
And then when they took me to Manus Island, then I was in a situation that I told myself I don't have anything else to lose. The only thing I have is like doing cartoons and documenting my own life. And there, I didn't have any thought of sharing my drawings with outside world. So I started just doing cartoons and documenting my own life by doing it.
How do you get to share them with the rest of the world? I mean, there's so many ways in which I frankly hate social media and so many ways in which it can be toxic. But in your case, it was a savior. It was that lifeline that really social media we would hope it to be. When did you and how did you realize that you could get your works out to people around the world, people in Australia and then internationally who would be able to help you eventually?
Yeah, it started from... it was this first month in Manus Island. I call it prison, Manus Island prison. I draw a picture from another perspective, from a sky, about the map, about the camp, about the detention centers. And what happened was the Australian authorities, they thought this is an escape map. They thought I drew this because I want to escape from the prison. So what they did was they started restricting me from having papers and pencils, and they started telling to all the workers to not to copy my drawings out, to not to carry my drawings out. And as I said at the start, when I lived there, we didn't have access to basic human rights. We didn't have telephone, internet. And what I did was I started stealing papers from the authorities, because I asked them nicely and they didn't give me. And then I used to hang around and then steal a paper, bring it to my room, draw cartoons on it. And for 2 years, I just drew cartoons without being able to show it to anyone outside world because of not having access to internet. And it was, 2 years after, it was in early 2015 when Australian government allowed me to have access to internet, 45 minutes for a week. And this internet was not like in the morning or in the afternoon. My internet time was in the middle of the night, so I had to keep awake to be able to use the internet. This small internet availability was such a huge opportunity for me.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time in 2 years that I could reach outside world. And what I did was, the internet is so slow there. It's like the middle of Pacific Ocean.
Right.
What I did was I logged into my Facebook account and I started sending random messages to random people on Facebook, telling them that I'm a cartoonist living in prison in an immigration center and I need help. And I continuously did this for over a year and a half and nobody replied to my messages. So this means I had 45 minutes internet and I had to go to the computer room, use the internet, come back and wait for 1 week, go back, and then 45 minutes, send messages to people, come back and wait. And this lasted over a year without anybody replying to me. until I got a bit lucky. Somebody replied to my message, and then she asked me about who I am and why I'm sending her these messages. The communication between me and her took months until she trusted me. She believed that I'm a person. I'm an actual person. Because I had only 45 minutes internet and she had too many questions. And then each time I went to the internet room, I had to answer one question, come back and wait. And then next week go back and she has another question and then come back and wait. And it sounds so funny because we are living in a world where life without internet is almost impossible.
Right.
And imagining that somebody had 45 minutes internet, slow internet, to be able to reach outside world, it was very it's very interesting. And this is happening in Australia. This is not happening in North Korea.
Right.
This is not happening in Iran.
And it's not happening 100 years ago. This is less than a decade ago, right? So it's crazy. It's a wild story. I want to refrain from you said cliche earlier, from asking over and over again, well, how did you keep going? How did you find the way to deal with this? But I mean, did you have, I'm thinking there's other people in the detention center. I mean, was there solidarity you could gain from other folks who were there? How do you, when you have no way to speak to the outside world, you have no sense of whether you're going to get asylum, you are going through this horrific experience, how did you maintain a sense of hope?
Yeah, the thing was, the reason I kept going was that I didn't want to die. That's why I left Iran. So I had lots of times I had suicidal thoughts during the time I lived there, okay? And I always told myself that if I wanted to die this easy, then I would have stayed back home. So this kind of thought gave me some hope. And also, while I was drawing and we didn't have access to internet there, my drawings, my cartoons were kind of newspapers in the camps. So each time I draw a cartoon, all the other detainees, they used to come and have a look at it and then give comments. And then, it was something interesting that people liked to see my next drawing. And so these things all together made me have hope, but I never had hope on doing something with my drawings, like changing anything. The only thing I was doing there was documenting my own life.
Well, there's an interesting paradox that emerges. There's an interesting thing that happens 2, 3, 4 years in, which is that at this point, you, through the connections that you do make, including with a prominent cartoonist with The Guardian, who starts also posting your works and corresponding with you. And I know there's a lot to tell about those stories, but basically you start gaining international popularity. And by 2016, you received the award for editorial cartooning by the Cartoonists Rights Network International. This is such a strange situation where you're now getting international popularity, you're winning a prize, but you can't accept it in person because of your imprisonment. Tell me about what that was like for you.
After this access to social media, I was able to somehow send my drawings to Australia. And then the people who helped me to publish my drawings, they started publishing them on newspapers and different galleries, and suddenly gained so much attention inside Australia in 2016, early 2016. And how I sent my drawings out was also interesting because I could not just go to a post office and send them. I had to find someone and then ask this person if he could take my drawings to Australia, and then actually smuggling my art to Australia because nobody was allowed to take my drawings to Australia. And suddenly gaining all these attention.
Oh, I see. You couldn't draw them and send them on social media?
For a very long time, no, because we didn't have any scanner.
Right.
And we were not allowed to have telephone. But at some point, I remember the Australian government put a scanner there. They didn't know this printer has a scanner. So what I did was I used it as a scanner, and I scanned some of my drawings and published them on social media until 2016. And suddenly I got a call from this organization in America, CRNI, and they told me that I'm going to be nominated for the editorial courage in cartooning award. And then actually it's opposite, it's courage in editorial cartooning. And so I couldn't believe it. It was like, I told myself, like, what now? Like, okay, you're winning an award, and what now? Is there anything gonna change? And obviously nothing changed, but recognition that I got from the cartoonist organization, it was very important to, and it was very it affected this story to be shared even more. My stories and my
but it also must have just been, I mean, on a number of levels. Now you're sort of making these connections internationally. You're realizing that you've got a voice. You're realizing that your cartoons are good. I mean, that people are I mean, not just good, but award winning. It must have been a real shot in the arm. And yet by early 2017, you go on a hunger strike. Tell me about what that was about.
Yeah. So one of the biggest problem I ended up after my drawings were published and the recognitions was that lots of authorities started having personal problem with me. You know, this was not only a problem from the government. Then there were people who were not happy for me talking about Australia like that, you know. And I remember it was before 2017 that even the police guards from Papua New Guinea and Royal Police Office, they came to the camp, and then they put me in a car, and then they beat me up as much as they could at one night. So I saw all these outcomes, you know, and I was like, okay, my drawings are doing something. That's why people are angry. That's why workers are angry. And of course, at the same time, there were other workers that they loved my drawings. You know, we didn't have only horrible workers there. We had people who cared for us, of course, there as well. And after all these recognitions, I started getting lots of harassments from some of the authorities, and also the Papua New Guinean Immigration Department.
Do you think that they just didn't like the fact that you were getting this attention, or do you think they saw you as a legitimate threat?
Maybe they saw me as a threat. Yeah, because you know, cartoons have big impact in the society, especially in the modern society. You see cartoonists make so much changes in the world, you know?
Yes.
So of course, my cartoons were doing something to them and exposing truth. And by end of 2016, I was not only sharing cartoons about my own life, but I was sharing cartoons about other people's life as well. So, yeah, the attention I got internationally was harming the authorities and the immigration departments. And until it was in February 2017 where I was tired of the harassment. I was tired of the getting all these horrible letters from the government. I started a hunger strike, which actually led to a huge cartooning campaign in the world again. Without me wanting it, you know, I just wanted to do a hunger strike and complain about my situation and then complain about all these harassments. I didn't have any other options, you know, except doing hunger strike. But this hunger strike suddenly led to so much international attention, and artists all around the world started running a campaign, #EatingFish.
Yes.
And asked all the cartoonists, all the artists all around the world to do cartoons for Eating Fish. And by that time, I was on the day 18th of hunger strike, and I weighed only 43 kilograms.
Oh my God.
And I was very skinny, very sick until like day 22. And I realized this campaign is so huge now. And I didn't want to kill myself again. So I ended the hunger strike on the day 22, and then I was just looking at all these people marching on the streets in Australia, carrying my drawings around, asking the government for my freedom. And I realized such a big impact my drawings had by just being, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
You finally achieve asylum in Norway by the end of that year, 2017. And I feel like in the movie version of your life, which I can only imagine might happen one day, at least the Hollywood version, you arrive in Norway and the sun is shining, and you're this person relieved of the detention you've been in, and life is joyous. But you had by this point been through so much, and I could only imagine that you would have trust issues no matter where you go. What was it actually like when you finally got to Norway?
Yeah, the first email I got from ICORN, the organization you just mentioned earlier, International Cities of Refugee Network. I didn't know what ICORN was. I wasn't in touch with any international organization before to seek help. I suddenly got an email while I was on hunger strike saying that we are working on your case. We are trying to get you out of there. And I just thought, okay, this is just someone wanting me to feel good. That's it. Until it was around September 2017, almost like 8 months after the hunger strike, I was being moved to Papua New Guinea capital city because of medical treatment. I had physical damages because of the hunger strike, and they had to move me to the capital city for proper medical treatment. And I got an email suddenly from the Norwegian immigration department saying that I'm welcome to go to Norway, and they have worked on my case, and then they were like welcoming me to take me to Norway. And it was kind of unbelievable. Like I was like, are they lying to me? Are they going to send me to another area in exile?
Right.
Or are they really
which boat am I going to have to get on to? Yeah, I mean, exactly. Yeah.
And at some points, I was even thinking they're going to send me back to Iran, and they're just lying to me, And there was this person when I was in hospital from the European Union came to me at one point, and then he told me not to worry about anything. And there is a lot of countries working on my case to get me out. He didn't specify which country, but he told me that there are people working on my case. And I did not believe nothing until I left Papua New Guinea. Yeah.
When you got to Norway, what was it like? How long did it take you to decompress and I don't know, feel like a normal person, or do you feel like a normal person?
Yeah, the thing is, when I got the call from Norwegian immigration, I was in hospital in Papua New Guinea, and I was almost dying because of internal infection. And they wanted me to take a photo of myself for the travel documents that they were preparing for me. And they were also sending me pictures of Stavanger, the city I'm currently living in. And they told me that I'm going to be moving to Stavanger soon and then live in Stavanger. And the photos were taken all in summer. And when I came here, it was end of winter. And then it was so dark and gray. And the freedom I got was not a healthy freedom. I suddenly got freedom without any preparation. So when I came to Norway, I even went through a deeper depression because the freedom I got was not healthy.
What does that mean? What does that mean? The freedom I got was not healthy.
The thing is, if you're a criminal, if you're a terrorist, if you're a criminal, if you're a killer, a robber, you go through judge. And then the judge tells you that you have to spend 2 years in prison. You have to spend 10 years in prison. So you know when it's going to end.
Yeah.
So you can prepare yourself 6 months before you're leaving. You know, you're going to go get freedom on this day, this exact day.
Not to mention, you likely have a representative, a lawyer. You have all of these kind of
exactly.
things.
And when I got my freedom, I was still in prison. I was still sick at the hospital with too many security guards around me. So I just walked out of the hospital and detention center, and I walked to the airport, and then I got to the airplane, and then I left. I believe that sudden freedom was not a healthy freedom. It's not a healthy freedom for anyone in that situation. When you are a criminal, you have a lawyer, and then the lawyer comes and tells you, like, you're going to get your freedom in 6 months. So you know when to expect the freedom.
Do you feel like you have a healthy freedom now?
Yeah, I think a year after I arrived in Norway, I believed that I was healthy. I had a healthy freedom. But especially the first 6 months, I was very sick. And the second 6 months, it was the timing that I was getting used to the freedom. And a year after, I believed that I was a total free man.
Ali, I know you risked your life to leave Iran in the most dire circumstances, whether it was in the detention center or whether it was when you go through this depression when you first get to Norway. In any of those moments, do you think, I just want to go back to Iran? Or, I'm guessing that wasn't really an option.
It wasn't something that I could choose. Yeah. We have all types of refugees and immigrants. There are some people that they can go back to their home country. So while I lived in these detention centers, there were people that they were able to go back to their country, like Iran, like Iraq, Syria, any country. And I did not have that option. And I was very jealous, actually. I was very jealous. And I was always telling myself that I wish I could do that. I wish I could choose something like that. So, yeah.
How much were you able to be in touch with your family back in Iran through all of this?
It was very difficult. The lack of communication equipment there. We had access to telephone for a while, and the telephone was so bad. It was landline, and talking to family was so difficult. Reaching the phone number was so difficult. And the internet was so slow, and trying to see your family's pictures, it was so difficult. And these difficulties also affect your soul, you're suffering from depression, you're suffering from imprisonment, you're suffering from injustice. So all these elements together make you like a depressed, dark human being, depressed, pressured human being. And I was very lucky that I dealt with all these difficulties forced on me, and I suddenly got my freedom.
How much does this live with you on a personal level? How easy is it, for example, for you to trust people?
I do not trust people that easy now. Not because nobody is trustworthy, but because of my mental condition. Australian government led me to this situation because I trusted international policies, international human rights declaration. I trusted it, and the trust was broken by one of the countries that has a high ranking of support of human rights and freedom of expression. So when all of these things happened, I became a person who could not trust anyone that easy, anything that easy. And until today, I can tell I have lots of trust issues, and it's not because of people around it. It's just because of me inside me.
There's actually a large, as you would know, Persian community in Australia. I know, for example, in Sydney, I mentioned this a few times on this program because when we look at our analytics for people who are listening to us across the globe on different platforms, there's many we have a big audience in Sydney, Australia. I'm guessing a lot of Persian immigrants there, or people who are interested in Iranian affairs, etc. Would actually now going to live in Australia be something that you would ever do?
Yeah, the thing is, I never hated Australia. I never hated Australian people or the people who worked in detention centers. So of course, I would love to go to Australia and live there, or I have thousands of friends there. And I'm sure if I tell everyone that I'm going to Australia, I'm going to be really, really welcomed. So these difficulties that I tolerated, they did not affect me or anyone as a human being. If I get the chance to go to Australia, of course I would be very happy, and my friends will be very happy to see me there.
I don't think anyone would blame you if you, at this point in your life, decided to go in a completely different direction. You're in Norway. You become an architect or a barista or a truck driver or a professor or whatever you want to do. But you continue to want to speak out about things. You posted on Instagram in April of last year. Let me quote you. I left the prison camps long ago, but didn't leave the memories of the children who were born in prison and still remain there, the memories of the ones who died in the camps unfairly, the memories of the people who remained in prison camps without committing a crime. I am their voice. We are their voice, the voice of the children behind the fences. Tell me why it's important to you, Ali, to continue to want to be that voice.
Yeah, the thing is, I meet lots of students, Norwegian students, and I go and visit lots of schools, and I think what Australian government did especially to children, was not fair, because children don't choose immigration. They didn't choose to migrate to Australia. Somebody else made the decision for them. They have parents, and then the parents make the decision, not the children. But what Australian government does is that they imprison everyone at once. They don't care if it's a child. The child didn't choose immigration. They don't care. It's a refugee. It's an asylum seeker that must go through detention centers. And also, when I was in detention centers, I used to, of course, log into my social media and see all these children behind the fences, the photos taken from these children behind the fences. And I was sure those children are seeing their own pictures also behind the fences, with the face blurred, and all these slogans, carrying around. The thing is, this is not going to be so easy for them when they grow up or in the middle of their life. It's not going to be easy for them to forget. And this is what Australian government created, the suffering, the torture that these children are carrying with themselves, Another thing that Australian government did, which was extremely horrible, was that as soon as you arrive in this detention center, Australian government gives you an ID card. And this ID card includes your name, your picture, your date of birth, and also a number.
Yeah.
So this number, for me, was RUF 115, Romeo Uniform Foxtrot 115. And this ID number was my name for over 5 years. Like, the authorities wouldn't call me by my name. They used to call me with number. And when I realized that Australian government was doing the same thing to children, not only to adult or middle-aged people, but also to children, calling children like numbers. As an adult, me, being called like a number for years, my own brain is slowly started devaluing me as a human being, because I was nothing but just a number. I didn't have any value. Also, the workers who used to work there unintentionally devalue you as a human being, because you're nothing, just a number. They're calling you like a number every day. And just imagine, I'm just telling you telling this to your audience, just imagine what happens to the mental health of these children who have been living through this hell, being called like a number in the past 10 years.
Can't even own your own name.
Exactly. And imagine these children, they get their freedom. And then what happens to them? The children, they don't have any picture of outside world. They don't have any picture of normal school. They don't have a beautiful picture of a kindergarten. They have a picture of a prison kindergarten. And I know some of these children. As I said, we had a baby on board on the boat that I went to Australia, and we had so many children born in detention centers, and these children, as soon as they open their eyes, they are behind the fences. They are 2-3 years old. They are still behind the fences. They see the pictures behind the fences. They see their parents going behind the fences and protesting to the Australian government. And I don't know if I have to call it irresponsible parents. Some of these parents, they used to take pictures of their own children with the slogans in their hands. And, just imagine what happens to the mental health of these children when they grow up. And how long are they, as an adult person, I am 31 years old now, and I'm still carrying the memories. I'm still carrying the pain and the torture with me. And just imagine all those children.
Is the Manus Island prison a refugee camp? I mean, I might as well call it prison, but is it still open?
In 2017, they closed it down, and then they built new accommodation. Actually, then they moved the people from there to the new accommodation, which was closer to the center of the island. But they called it a different name. So they say they closed down the detention center, and then they opened another accommodation center to keep the immigrants there.
But it sounds like you don't think that the conditions have changed that much.
No, the condition didn't change. People there are not healthy. They spent 5-10 years behind the fences in prison, and then now they're being moved to another accommodation. They're not normal people. They do not believe that accommodation is their home or a healthy area.
How much time do you spend drawing these days?
I usually I draw very little actually lately. And that's just because I do work on other projects, and I have a life that I have to pay my bills, and I have to develop myself as a person in the society. But I also spent so much time on researching and immigration researches, and spend time talking to lots of people in my meetings, in my storytelling sessions, and
It's I really appreciate you telling your story. I really appreciate you coming on our program, taking the time, hearing the questions and responding in the way you have. If you were to look back at you, 10 years ago or so, the 20-year-old leaving Iran, what do you feel like you've most learned in that decade amongst all the ways you've educated yourself through this journey you've been on?
Yeah, okay. So I have to say that when I was a child, I started drawing cartoons when I was 5 years old. I started copying cartoons from different artists, comic books. And I always looked at all these cartoons in different magazines, and then seeing that all these famous cartoonists, they have their own signature, they have their own name, and they're publishing their works on the magazines. And lots of people know them even if they don't write their name down. And I always wished to be one of these people, someone like that. And when I was in prison in Australia, all those people that I used to wish to be like when I was a child, all those internationally famous artists, they draw cartoons for me and post them on #EatingFish. And that was such a huge achievement in my life. I actually reached one of my wishes, to be known as a cartoonist, to be known as an internationally well-known cartoonist. And that was such an achievement for me. It happened during the time that I suffered so much. But I look at it as a very, very positive thing in my life.
Okay, so that's amazing. That's a goal that a dream that you achieved. What about what you've learned about yourself or about the key to life? If I can ask you that as if we're 100 years old,
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I believe I am a totally different person than I thought I would be when I was a child. And the person I am now is more patient. This person is more, I care more about life now. I care more about small moments. I care more about small happy time that you make with your friends, that you make with your family. Because I craved it for over 5 years, And in that 5 years, I realized how much life means by just hanging around, by just being, And it suddenly created a different philosophy for me and my life.
I think you do know how to answer the question. That was beautiful. Ali Dorani, thank you so much for this today.
It was a pleasure to be here. The thing is, you asked me to be on this program. The thing is, I'm not just talking about my story. We are sharing the stories of the voiceless children, voiceless people behind the fences. And this is such a great opportunity for them to be heard. And I really, really appreciate you for giving me the chance, giving all those people the chance to be here.
Thank you, Ali Jan.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Ali Dorani, better known perhaps by his pen name Eaten Fish, is an Iranian cartoonist and activist who gained recognition for drawings about his everyday life while being detained in a notorious Australian refugee camp on Manus Island, Papua New Guinea, for almost 4 years. You can catch his works at eatenfish.com. Ali Dorani joined us from Stavanger, Norway today. Microphones back on for Keon, Reza, and Shaya.
Wow.
Quite a story, eh?
Yeah.
Quite a story.
Yeah, I know.
So what was your greatest takeaway from that story, Shaya?
For seeking freedom, you have to go into the mouth of death. Yeah, and so I'm sad. Honestly, I'm a little bit sad. Right.
What was your immediate takeaway, Keon? What do you feel like right now, hearing Ali?
What is shocking to me is that the level of desperation that people are so desperate in Iran to go through, as Shaya said, they're willing to face death just to get out of there, just to live a free life and at any price. And the sad reality is that we don't hear about this stuff very often. And this happens every day, not just from Iran, from different countries. People are desperate to get out of war, of famine, all of these horrible things. And it's just, unfortunately, it's not as covered in the media.
Well,
especially in Australia. I had no clue that a country that is
supposed to be a first world country, part of the United Nations Human Rights Commission. Since 1953, like the human rights, like the
advertised as a great democracy.
And what they did, he was right when he said Ali is politics, because what they're trying to do, it's the right wing government that is in place. Really, what they're trying to do, they're trying to deter immigrants from coming to the country, but they can't advertise it. So they're trying to create word of mouth situation by lawyering it right. So by law, they're getting away with murder, essentially, like with
Well, they're also passing the buck. There was that thing he said where he said, what did he say? He said
they blame the blame.
That's right. They send them to this island in Papua New Guinea, and then they say, well, that's not our territory.
Yeah, that's not our territory.
And then Papua New Guinea says, well, no, these are Australian.
They're not
immigration
our
camps.
prisoners. Were not responsible for them. So that's what I'm saying. By doing that, they're getting away. They're getting around. That's a loophole for international laws. Human rights.
You know, halfway through the interview, you're going, oh, this is the story about how difficult it can be being in prison.
Yeah.
You know, and then you're like, why is he in prison? I mean, this is this person none of these people have done anything. You know, they've just except want to leave a country. And back to before the interview, reading the charter on the World Refugee. You know, the right to seek safety, and I mean, it's a, you know, he's just looking for basic rights, and he gets put in this what sounds like a really horrendous kind of prison camp.
Yeah.
One doesn't want to use the words concentration camp, but I mean, it's basically,
and it's gotten progressively worse. Like, they treated him like he's a true criminal, whereas like they didn't give him access to paper, like, as they thought he was gonna plan out like a escape from prison. That's insanity. Like, to put on a young refugee from another country, that like, what are your, it's just, and again, it's so easy to blame racism on a micro level, but I think the problem is much more macro than that. Like, who are the people in charge that are letting that condition be?
Well, let me get
exist?
to that. Let me 2 steps back. What something Keon said. When you listen to a story like that, the immediate reaction is to be angry with Australia for the treatment of those seeking asylum. But then, upon reflection, as Keon was intimating, people wouldn't be seeking asylum were it not for the unlivable conditions in Iran for some folks, right?
That's true,
forcing them into exile. So should our frustrations be more targeted at Australia or at Iran? Shaya.
That's what a question.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is an interesting question.
But definitely, I would say both. But yeah, I blame my country, Iran. But in that boat, it's not only Iranian. It's like they are from all over the place. So
but yeah, Ishaya is right. People are from all over the place. Like, would the Ukrainian blame like Russia for attacking them, or like Australia
yes.
for
They
not?
would,
Well, of course you would.
But the thing is okay. Hang on a second though. He had to leave Iran. We don't know the exact story, and it's his right to, you know, keep it private, whatever. But he had to leave Iran. It's not a surprise, as he said. We all know the situation in Iran, etc. So I feel like ultimately, you know, the responsibility lies with Iran in terms of. I mean, that would seem like if we're addressing the roots of this. But the other thing that he said was, unlike Iran, perhaps, the promise of what Australia is promising something on the world stage. And, you know, he said, if I knew that when I get there, I'm going to be put in a prison, I wouldn't have gone, right? I mean, I wouldn't have gone on that boat and all of that, right? And I know you've told the story a few times, Reza, but I mean, we don't, you know, your situation going to different countries in the world and stuff when you left Iran. But it's that thing that Keon was saying of the desire is so great to want to get out, because you're just going, man, this kid, at the time he was, you know, whatever, 20, he said, or something. He's looking at a boat and going, that thing's going to sink, but I have no choice. I have to get on that. Right?
I that sense of urgency to wanting to get out of, and I say, it saddens me to say Iran, but somewhere, a place where you feel like you're being suffocated for some reason, I understand that. I identify with that. Like, I remember, like, I'd left Iran. I was on the way I was supposed to go to the United States, and I got caught in China. I would spend some time in jail, and then I got out. They were going to deport me back to Iran. Like, I could have, like, just simply go home, right? Everybody kept saying, just go home. You want to go home? Like, tell us who you really are so we can send you home. And all I was saying is that I don't want to go home. That's the point. I don't want to go home. Send me anywhere else but home. And they did. They sent me to different jails.
What about now that you work with Shaya? Would you still?
Shaya is
A
my
jail
home
so
now.
bad that he's stuck with Shaya.
But can I say something about art actually?
Well, I want Keon to answer this question first about the where your frustrations lie in this. The story is ostensibly about what happened to him based on what the Australian government did, but you were pointing out that this is actually about Iran for you. I mean, you reflect on that.
That's where it starts. I think it's rooted at like the government making it so unlivable for its own people, and they're basically prisoners in Iran. Like, look at Reza; he went through the same thing. It's they're willing to go through anything to get out of there. So it starts with Iran. I mean, Australia is not innocent by any means, but to me, but you can go back even further than that. You know, it reminds me of years ago, this made headlines. Remember that little boy, the Syrian boy that got washed up on shore? And similar situation, he was dead, obviously. Yeah. He was just his family was trying to get out of the war in Syria, and the boat, I guess, overturned, and a bunch of people died. And that made headlines because the picture was so shocking, seeing a little boy on that beach. And who do you blame in that? You can't blame Syria. All these different countries that started this war there. So it goes back so far that it's like, who can you blame to make these countries so unlivable?
But so in that case, it is true that if you support the idea that people should be able to seek asylum and get it, then I mean, I don't even know these immigration camps. It's what a fib, you know. what an idea. Like, I mean, the concept that we're going to put you in this place where you can't be in contact with anybody, you can't have your basic rights for years.
Yeah. So it's funny. Canada has that too. And we do have that. But here's the thing: we have it only for people who are flight risks. Escaped like immigrants, like, because when you migrate to Canada, whether or not you have a passport, if you're an immigrant, if you're a refugee, they process you and then you're free to go. You can stay in the country, like go through the process. But if you in Montreal, if you don't have any identification with you, at least that's how it was like 16 years ago. If you don't have any identification with you to show who you actually are, because usually you travel with a fake passport, most refugees do, right? They put you in a detention center, which is in Laval in Quebec. And
there's probably updates on this because of
most likely,
recent refugee crises, but we should find out.
It did feel like that was like it was a prison type, like it was run that way, but it was very clean, very organized. I was there. I was there for 20 days. You had access to telephone, internet, everything.
That doesn't sound as bad.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like we do have that too, but it's humane. Like other, like Austria has that too, same thing, but for people who, or other Germany, for people that are maybe flight risk.
Can I just ask when you left?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't around the same time. It was a little earlier.
It was
than him. But was Australia not an option for you?
It was.
Why did you end up? Or I mean, how did you end up here rather than?
For me, it wasn't a matter of like I just want to go anywhere. I wanted to go to California. and
you got there. Oh wait.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So close.
Yeah.
Thanks, Reza.
Yeah. No, the guy actually the humans.
On behalf of all Canadians.
Sorry, guys, but hey, I'm proud. True North.
What were you going to say about art, Shaya? Because that's the other part of this story that's really inspiring. This idea of
exactly. I mean, it's interesting that he, I believe, he started to like painting in order to escape the prison of his mind, the prison of the negative thought.
Yes, he didn't even know. That was the part of the story I didn't actually know, that he didn't know that this was going to be his way out. He was doing it for his own catharsis.
And I think it works everywhere. If you don't feel, I mean, if you think that your environment is not good, you have to first escape from your mind. Then it makes you to escape from.
That was
I think the
beautifully
worst.
put,
I think the worst part of all of this is the fact that there's children that are born into this reality, and that's all they know. They never know.
That's his mission. That's his
No.
thing at the end about the kids born in these camps. Yeah.
That was the most shocking part of it all, I think. for me.
One of our team. Let me ask another question, because one of our team members was calling Ali Dorani a brown refugee today. And I think his implication was being that there's a hierarchy or a kind of a caste system when it comes to refugees, and how developed countries deal with them. How much should we reflect on the way Iranian refugees might be treated and welcomed versus white refugees from Eastern Europe, for example?
I think for my perception has been over the years that it has to do with the political climate. Like which government is that in place, what's trending more. Like there was a time where if you were a refugee from an Eastern European country, like there were a lot of LGBT refugees from Russia that would come here, and they had a hard time. Their case would be in processing time for 5-6 years. It was in and they would hear that from their lawyers, that is case by case, but right now like Russia is tough. But then Syrian cases were being processed left, right, and center. The political climate was that's how it was. It was just. But at this point, I think because given the condition of Iran, I mean, it saddens me to say it, brown refugees and white refugees, I think, are on the same level, given just the condition of the world, like Ukraine, what's happening over there. I don't think
What
it's
do you
that.
mean they're same level?
what
you
do
think
you
they're
mean?
treated the
In terms of being-
same?
No.
I
In
mean,
terms of the
Mohammed,
political.
who brought this up today, his point was, this is racism.
Yeah.
This is what's happening. What in this particular case, he's convinced this was that has to do with Ali Dorani. Or I mean,
Being
we're
brown.
not being exactly about his skin, but
Caste system,
metaphorically or symbolically, he's a brown refugee. Yeah, he's an Iranian.
But there is. I think there is something to that for sure.
And I see it blatantly in the media. There's more sympathy to, for example, white Ukrainian refugees than there is to basically any other non-white refugee. It's
I buy that. I agree with that.
Well, then the argument is, because they're more like us. But at what point is what is us in Canada now?
Yeah.
Us is us, right?
I know.
So
Us is constantly changing.
And yet there's still this notion that more like us would mean a white Ukrainian.
It's true.
Yeah.
It is true.
Not that they shouldn't be allowed asylum or whatever.
There was something that he did not mention. If you travel as a refugee, you travel to Australia by plane, you're treated very differently, and you're put in a different camp. It's still a camp. It's in another island, but it's not Manus Island. And like, what is the difference now? Like, why people who can afford like a plane ticket, so they're more proper? Is that like the thought process? Maybe. I don't know. That's interesting.
Even that though, even the idea of, again, for someone who grew up in the West, the idea of paying a smuggler. You're not like paying somebody in an alley for a joint. Like you're paying for your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
The title of this episode, The Cost of Seeking Freedom. You're paying, and in some cases your life savings, in the hands of somebody you don't know, right?
Yeah.
And there's no background check.
No.
You might know somebody else who used the same guy or something like that. The deal was the smugglers were going to get him to Australia.
Yeah.
Which is not directly. So you're paying someone to take you to Indonesia, where you're going to get on another boat, and you don't even speak English, and the whole thing is so foreign to me. Yeah. I know, and it's not the way you came, Shaya, but right? But
what do you mean?
Well, you didn't pay anybody to get out.
No.
You did.
I did.
Yeah.
And
Keon was the one collecting the money, so she definitely did.
Yeah. She was the agent. She overcharged the hell out of me.
I wouldn't have let you in, that's for sure.
I wanted that Shaya discount. We're after that.
No, but even that, like I think once when you told the story, you talked about how you're. I mean, just even that, how you decide who you're going to entrust with your life.
That's the thing. It's a purely trust business, and it was so interesting. Like when he was talking about. Dealing with the human smugglers, because what that does, and just how, like, who he has become right now in terms of his thought process, dealing with people, and just becoming a better personality analyst in general, because that business.
Well, he said he doesn't trust anybody.
That's the thing.
Naturally.
And you do lose that sense of trust, because it's, first of all, that business, that smuggling business, is a trust business. Simple as that. And here's the trust: one-way street. This is a one-way street trust. You're gonna have to trust the smuggler. Simple as that. Usually, if they're nice, they'd be like, "Oh, give me half the money right now." If he really knows what he's doing and he knows you, he trusts you that he can get his money back from you, he'll be like, then the rest, like right before I'm about to like send you off to your destination, like last basically trip. But normally it's, I'm gonna take all the money up front and I'm gonna leave right now. I'm gonna fuck off, and you'll hear from me. Maybe you won't, but you will.
But you use somebody that you've heard, like it, did you?
Yeah.
That
Usually
somebody
what
else
they do-
has used or something.
But even that, because usually when people introduce people to other people, they're like, "Oh, yo, I use somebody, but I don't know. I have a phone number." That's how it works.
When we talked about, I think, as I said in the interview, when they're making the movie version of this, it's his story is such a movie, Ali Dorani. There's that part where he's in a jungle or something. He's going to the boat and he sees the broken down boat.
Yeah.
And he says, "I got to get in that. There's no option, because where am I going to go? I don't even know how to get back to where. There's only moving forward at that point, right?
Yeah. And that is actually
And he
key.
can swim.
That's
And that wasn't in any of the
mind-blowing.
research. I didn't know that
He was like, I couldn't swim. That was crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
That is crazy. Because usually you have like fear of what, like crazy. You wouldn't even get on a boat. This guy, man, damn.
He went further than you did.
Oh, dude, come
His
on.
cartoons
It
are
was
amazing.
Yeah,
The work he's doing is great.
Yeah, it's incredible.
All right. Any final words, Shia?
خدا کنه دنیا جایی بهتری بشه.
Well,
Simple as this.
that's
yeah.
very
Yeah,
nice,
man.
Shia.
Yeah, man.
That's very nice.
Yeah, man.
Put that on a t-shirt, buddy.
I know.
Thank you very much, guys. Captain
Thank you,
Reza,
sir.
Groovy Shia, the fabulous Keon. See you guys next Monday. See you Thursday, Shia.
Of course.
We didn't have letters
See you every
today?
day. We do have letters, but we're tight for time.
Oh,
Oh,
What a
you
good
wanted to
show.
do Avia?
yeah.
Thank God we don't
Can
have
I,
letters
can, I,
today.
can I still do
We
the
could do
Abia?
the theme.
Guys,
could
we
do-
don't have the Abia, but we're going to give you the theme. Can we, Shia?
Sorry, I cannot do that.
Yeah, thank you.
You have to pay a smuggler.
I know. I mean, they come to this country and then they want their own theme. This is full time for Rook for today. Thank you so much for joining us. Our website, rookmedia.com, is where you can find all of our episodes, including our previous week's letters of the week, where the theme song with Reza's voice, his mellifluous tones.
Yeah.
Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together: Savvy Roham, talented Anahita, Ponsa the artist, the fabulous Keon, Super Parisa, Smart Pega, Ahai Merdad, Captain Reza, and Groovy Shia. Thank you to all of you out there for supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you've not done so already on any of our platforms or all of them. You can become a patron by supporting us by pressing the Support Us button at rookmedia.com. And see you Thursday for our next episode. In the meantime, as ever, Reza?
میزون باشی.